Because if you have a cohesive, highly performing team, you have a great culture. It's unusual to have a great culture with a low performing team. So when we talk about teams and measurement, if we can help understand how teams perform and then provide a roadmap to improving that team performance, then it'll nearly always improve the culture.
Welcome to the Great Talent, Great Business podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit greattalentpodcast.com, where you can download this episode's free worksheet designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm here with Eddie Geller, an entrepreneur and high-performance strategist who knows that measurement can unlock the best in leaders and their teams. He's the founder and CEO of SKOR, that's SKOR, a platform that helps companies measure and improve team performance. He previously co-founded Tiny Beans, which went public in 2017. Originally from Australia and now in New York, Eddie's career spans building high-performing teams, scaling companies, and advising leaders on culture and growth. Eddie, it's great to see you and great to have you on the show. Let's dive right in.
Thanks so much, Rob. A pleasure to be here.
Eddie, with SKOR, you're helping leaders see their teams in a different way. What are you uncovering about what really drives team performance?
After, I guess, probably up to 3 decades of working in all sorts of organizations that I founded and hundreds of different teams, the whole construct of a team dynamic is very different everywhere you go. And obviously the biggest challenge we find with teams is that it's a dynamic construct, location-based team, functional-based team, practice-based team, etc. And I found that in the past, so much of it would be focused on lots of subjective data, qualitative feedback, lots of conversations that I guess infects bias and perception and hope. And that doesn't really work to build a really cohesive, high-performing team. And if we were to create a science and a platform, which we have done around SKOR, where we measure the team, we can get to much more root cause and, more importantly, an action plan around it. Because in the past, we're trying to figure out how teams perform, and frankly, too much uncertainty was there, and it led to symptoms. And you do all this stuff and then expect the team to get better, and nothing really improved. So we've taken a whole new approach to measurement, where, for example, measure leaders is different to how we measure team members. And we collect the 360 of team to then obviously provide a holistic view of a measurement component that then provides a clear action plan with it.
All right. So to give everybody some context here, just give us a brief overview of the SKOR concept. What kind of data are you getting? Who are you getting it from?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Absolutely. Just to provide a bit more context to your point, SKOR, as the name suggests, every team gets a score. You get a score out of 100. So we measure the teams, and I'll explain how we do that in a minute, where every team gets a score out of 100. So you have a sales team in the East Coast could be 33, and the sales team in the West Coast could be 45, and the customer service team could be 73, right? So every team gets its own score. And we measure that score through what we call the 3 C's of teams: cohesion, clarity, and courage. So we're trying to understand their core behaviors, how they turn up together, where they go as a team, and then how they deal with the bumps and bruises along the way around how teams perform and drive to outcomes and achieve their goals. So what we're asking is a quantitative-based assessment. You asked me, what data are we capturing? So if you're a team member, you get 35 questions. If you're a leader of teams, you get 50 questions. Every question is a rating scale 0 to 10. And with that lens and with that measurement, we then be able to create a whole approach to what each team scores, and then more importantly, what the root cause of that score is, and then the action plan around. For example, the team that scored 33 would have maybe a low cohesion score and an average courage score. The team with 75 could be really high in all 3. So we're trying to understand, like, maybe the team is really good with their core values, common beliefs, but struggle with understanding accountability and their goals, because maybe the managers aren't great with holding their people accountable, and maybe they're not clear with what their goals are. So we're trying to understand what are the things that are holding the team back and then be able to obviously unpack that to then be able to identify the action plan for the team moving forward.
Gotcha. And this might seem basic, but provide the connection between culture and team performance.
Absolutely. Culture is one of those things we all very different definitions. And when I speak to CEOs all the time, it's a very fuzzy term. It's ephemeral, fuzzy. It's like this feel good. And yes, of course, the academic definition is behaviors and norms in the organization, right? That's the academic aspect. But when I ask the question all the time, I was even had comments last week, and I said, describe to me your culture. And there's like this pause. When you get this pause, you know what that means, right? And they're like, oh, we're hierarchical. Okay, that's one way to define your culture. Another one could be, oh, we're trying to get better. Interesting. So you get all these very unusual responses of
Right.
culture. So what we've tried to do is really move away from that word, frankly, and talk about in terms of performance and how teams turn up. Because if you have a cohesive, highly performing team, you have a great culture. It's unusual to have a great culture with a low performing team. Clearly, that's an exception. But if you have a high performing environment and a high performing team, you typically have a positive culture. They're not always correlated, but I would say 90% of the time they're correlated. So when we talk about teams and measurement, if we can help understand how teams perform and then provide a roadmap to improving that team performance, then it'll nearly always improve the culture. And just one thing I just want to add is the word team is a really powerful word because the whole organization is a team. You know, you have a sales team, they have a leadership team. They're all teams. The best analogy is the football analogy, right? You got a whole team, but you have the offensive and defensive team. Your goals are largely the same, but the metrics that defines the success of your team is frankly somewhat different. So we think of organizations the same way, and we've tried to apply this sort of the science of sports to workplace, because if we help teams perform, engage, and trust each other to obviously deliver their goals better, you will undoubtedly have a significantly better culture as a consequence of it.
Makes a lot of sense. And thanks for explaining that. It seems very obvious to me. I don't want to say it's a fact, but it seems very obvious to me that the younger generations in the marketplace seem to care a lot more about culture than the older generations do. Have you found that to be the same? And does that mean that it seems to me that there's more of a movement to, hey, this culture stuff really matters and it actually impacts performance greatly. What are you seeing?
A great question. I definitely think there's a growing movement of, to your point, that culture drives performance and it definitely drives, I guess, happier people and more engaged employees. But I just want to say, in terms of the sort of the younger generation to older generation, we've done a ton of this stuff. I was actually at a conference back in June in Atlanta, and I was speaking to this partner at a law firm, and I was asking him about his team and culture, all the rest of it. And he's like, "Oh, Eddie, like the younger generation just don't work as hard as the older generation. They feel like they can just get by and that's it." I'm like, "Is that it? Is that really what the conclusion is, that the younger generation don't work as hard?" He goes, "Yeah, definitely." I'm like, "Well, the data doesn't back that up. If anything, actually, the younger generation, if they're motivated well, somewhat could argue would perform better and with more hours, but they're just how they go about performing those hours and what motivates them is very different." I think a key factor that's not actually talked about a lot is motivation. How to motivate the younger generation is very different to how to motivate older generations. And frankly, some are self-motivated, some need a clearer plan of it. And one thing that we talked about, and this comes up a lot, is when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, the winner got an award, and that's it. You got one prize. But the people entering workplace in their 20s, every one of the team gets an award, the whole participation award. So think about that dynamic of those people in the workplace. They feel recognition is a daily muscle that needs to be flexed for them to really recognize and understand their work. Whereas, again, the older generation don't need a daily recognition. If anything, they feel it's kind of like offensive and unnecessary. I'll get on with doing the thing I need to do without being recognized. So I think that's the key dynamic we see in teams and organizations. It's people understanding how they're motivated, how they're recognized, and how they're rewarded. They're the biggest things that I think impact how teams perform, whether you're older or younger. I think people need to understand that dynamic between each other to perform better together. And it's not like classic stereotype of younger kids don't know how to work hard, or the older guys, the older generation basically always pissed off with us. Like, it's just not the way it's always like that. But I think an area, the theme we always see is recognition, reward, motivation are muscles that are somewhat not really flexed well. And one thing that I think is also not done well is healthy conflict is really much easier for younger generation. Older generations are not good at healthy conflict or feedback at all. So again, when you bring these different team members together, you have somewhat of a clash, but somewhat potentially of a high performing team if they understand how to work with each other to perform better, because these are all strengths and weaknesses of teams. But it's just a fascinating conversation, talk about the younger and older generations of teams.
Yeah, and I think older generations like us, the Xers and the boomers, we have to find a way to work with them. And it's accepting the fact that there are differences, just like there are probably differences between the greatest generation and our generation and the boomers. And on top of that, as AI becomes more prevalent, it's the younger generations that are going to be leading the charge there because they're the digital natives. We are not.
Totally.
So that's a powerful message for all business owners. Eddie, when it comes to growing business, what have you seen? Does the culture need to change, or does it adapt as a company grows, or does it not change at all? How should business owners who are in growth mode be thinking about culture and change?
Yeah, look, I mean, the culture is very linked to the leadership, right? The CEO, the owner, the founders, leadership team, etc. And if it's not written, it's what's lived. If it's not said, it's what's lived, right? So whether or not you're 2 people, 5 people, or 500 people, it's really that leadership and how that then pervades across the organization. I find that things like culture and performance and how to influence behavior to align to whatever the core values organization is a stepwise level of investment. You get going, maybe you're a dozen people who start to identify that maybe you need core values, and then you get on with it, and then before you know it, you're at 50 people, and then that needs another adjustment, and then maybe you're at 100 people, needs another adjustment. I think best practice, as you would know in EOS, is every year you're revisiting them. Are these still our right core values? Is this still the representing of our culture? Is this still the mission and purpose we're on? Because did you buy a company in that process? Did you hire 3 new people in leadership team? I don't believe in this concept of, oh, we did it a few years ago, it's on our website and it's fine. Well, the people in this room, the leadership team, live these values every day. Have they signed up to these values every day? Because if they haven't, then as you know, they're not lived out there. I think all that pervades the culture. And then obviously it starts with core values, but then what is the leadership team like? Are they transparent? Do they lean into challenges? Do they share the good news or the bad news as well? Are they open to feedback? Are they open to being critical and vulnerable? All those affect the culture because it's all led by those people in the leadership team. So I think best practice is an annual review of what that leadership team stands for and what it accepts and what it doesn't accept, and then continue to evolve and grow the organization. But it's really what's lived. And the last thing I'll say is, I would say nearly all organizations we work with, a handful are best at this, but most of them really struggle with weaving in core values every day and weaving in the behaviors that they expect every day. Because they think like, oh, we've got it, we'll do it in sort of annual review, but they don't do anything to really weave it into the daily behaviors. And that's the biggest, I think, upside and opportunity teams have. I think leadership teams out there need to think about it on an annual basis, but also not just think about it, really have rocks around it, have people accountable around it, measure people, and recognize that everyone that basically lives those values on a daily basis, which today very few do.
Yeah. When I talk about values, are you hiring by them? Are you managing by them? Are you firing by them? Mm-hmm. There's a little bit more to it than that, but that's really the basic framework.
This episode is brought to you by Work Better Now, your trusted partner for accessing high-performing talent from Latin America. Our clients say that partnering with Work Better Now has transformed their businesses by providing the proactive, reliable, and skilled professionals they need to thrive. For more resources to help your business grow, visit workbetternow.com/eguide. And if you're ready to build your dream team, head to workbetternow.com to schedule your consultation today. As a special thank you to great talent, great business listeners, we're offering $150 off your first 3 months. Just mention great talent during your consult.
Switching gears a little bit, there's a big movement now of companies, we're one of them, who have adopted operating systems like EOS or Scaling Up or any of those. What's the intersection of those? Do you find that if companies are using those operating systems, does that help them with culture, or is there not much of an effect on culture?
Great question. I find any of those systems are really amazing and really effective because they put people at the center. Like you're always talking about the people. And when you're talking about the people, it definitely is a benefit to your culture because you're thinking about what drives your people, what motivates them, from accountability to the VTO and EOS to scaling up and talking about forecasting and sharing the financials. So I think all of that really benefits teams and benefits organizations. Is all upside. Having said that, as you would know, one thing is the theory of these tools. The other thing is the implementation of them is very different. As leadership teams embrace this stuff and embrace these systems and then really want to see how they can drive high performance, we need to be talking about our people every day. And the hardest thing is execution, as you know. GWC in the EOS world is easy to understand, very hard to execute, right? It's like Bob's been there for years and now all of a sudden he doesn't get it anymore. Like, what's going on? Sally doesn't have the capacity, but she's been there for 9 years. Like that, they're tough conversations, right? Because you're trying to swap out loyalty, allegiance, and commitment with performance. And what trumps what, right? Performance always, but then how do you measure the performance? So I think these systems are great, but they sometimes be careful what you wish for too. We find teams sometimes are like, they don't want to face the facts, but they are okay not to sometimes because of that. But I think organizations that have embraced those things always are better off with their culture. I just think we sometimes get fooled at a leadership level of what the realities are out there. And when you cascade these things in, especially multiple levels of management, that gets lost. So we found like leadership team is all over it, but like 2 levels down, managers are like, they have no idea about this stuff and frankly always get squeezed in the middle and then complain at both ends that performance is poor. I think it's really important to cascade effectively and build the muscles no matter where or how those leaders really manage their team, because often they get left behind, especially the middle managers. But overall, to your point, I think these systems are a benefit for sure.
Yeah, cascading messages and training are key. I want to explain to the viewer listeners not familiar with the EOS. GWC is gets it, wants it, has the capacity to do it.
Sorry, yeah, good one.
I found that it's really easy to just check those boxes or put the pluses in there.
Yeah.
That tool is really valuable, but only if you actually spend the time thinking about it, because people do change and or roles do change, certainly for a growing company. And at some point, there's not a good fit. And if you blow over that, you're missing the early signs, maybe the early signs. At this point, they may not even be that early. So
Totally right.
Glad you brought that up.
On that point, one of the other tools that I think is really powerful is a whole accountability chart that I think too few organizations really utilize. All organizations are filled with an org chart, but to move that along and focus on accountability chart is hard, but actually a really effective tool. And I think also lends itself to culture, because when people are clear of accountabilities and clear about how they're being measured and clear what their team members are also accountable to, they just perform better. The classic like sports, right? If you know that they're going to be on third base because that's their role, as opposed to the other person on second base, you know where they're going to be. Like just so many teams in organizations just don't have that clarity. So I love those tools.
Yeah, the accountability chart, when used properly, is very powerful because it removes the mystification about who's accountable for what.
Totally.
As opposed to a team does it. That's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about the topic of the decade, AI. Some people say AI is going to replace jobs. Some people say the people who know how to use AI will replace the people who don't use AI. Some people are like, AI, it's not even on my radar. What are your thoughts about AI? Let's start there, because that'll lead into my follow-up question there.
I think it's an incredible time, Rob, in terms of the world of what AI means and its potential and how it's going to affect our lives and worlds, really, in every possible way, personally and professionally, right? So I think it's absolutely going to have a huge impact, and it's already having impact. I think we're only just beginning. One podcast I listened to probably about a year ago, actually, it's pretty early in the AI journey, although we are still early, but the way it's so rapidly developing, like with ChatGPT 5, for example, last week, we are lightning in terms of speed. But one thing that really stuck with me that I try to take everywhere I go with this topic is it'll never replace human connection. Now, clearly, there's the world of robots, and maybe that'll do it. When I say human connection, I think really about that, how humans interact and how humans really live, whether it's physical, emotional, mentally, etc. So when I think about the world of AI, I think it's really about turning us into superhumans, not just basically replacing us. Now, clearly, some tasks and some repeatable tasks and processes should be replaced by automation. If you go through the history of our lives, that's what the world is. I mean, remember the world of fax and then email and then typewriters and computers. If you follow the history of the world, no one's actually having horses and looking after them and carriages, right? I mean, those jobs are gone. So I think natural evolution will definitely replace jobs. But one thing that I keep on talking to our clients about is how to think about teams. I think in not too distant future, we'll have an AI agent in every team, in team meetings. They won't just be taking notes, though. They'll be participants. They'll be in the meeting, adding value. And the wonderful thing, you can add context. So let's say, for example, working on an updated release of our product. And we say to the AI, we want you to act like a new customer of ours that's just joined, that you don't know about the product set. Be in the room like a new, how powerful is that? Or be in the room like you're a 5-year customer, or be in the room like you're a competitor of ours. That is mind-blowingly powerful. As teams, I go back to teams because its work is done in teams, right? I think if people learn how to embrace these tools to enable how they serve their stakeholders, their customers, their investors, the market, whoever, their employees, I think that they'll be more effective. But yeah, to your point, definitely we're going to lose jobs. But I think new jobs will be created and we'll overserve the market because of it. So anyway, we're trailblazing like you, but it's certainly an exciting time.
Yeah, so I couldn't agree anymore, which leads me to the second part of that question, which is, what are the cultural elements that need to be in place so that a small or mid-sized business, the team, the entire company, is ready to leverage AI successfully in the business?
I love that question. It's so interesting, right? Because as you asked me the question, Rob, one of our advisors, Gogi Anand, he's one of the SKOR advisors. He used to be the principal people scientist at Microsoft and now leads Copilot. And we talk to him all the time, and he's like, there's no conversation he has with his clients around Copilot that's not around culture change. You can't embrace this without culture change. And what that means is, for example, a key part of when we talk about high-performing teams is growth mindset. Growth mindset means you have to be learning, you have to be comfortable in failure. Now, a team can't embrace trying new things with AI without being comfortable in failure, without being comfortable in growth mindset. We also talk about adaptability is a key muscle of high-performing teams. You can't embrace AI without being adaptable to what it's doing for you or not for you, on how it's adapting to your clients, or how you need to adapt for your clients or for your projects or for your goals if you're not embracing AI properly. So in order to actually embrace AI really properly, you have to actually have these muscles of high-performing teams. Otherwise, it's just going to be another tool. And if it's just another tool, then you're going to be left behind.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if you really want to embrace it truly, you have to experiment with it. I don't know if there's much cursing allowed on your show, but I remember early days in AI world, they talked about FAFO. You familiar with FAFO, the acronym around AI?
No, nope.
It's fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a team sense of the innovation mindset of like, let's try this out. Hey, this is what we did in the past. How would AI do this in the future?
Hello, Gen Z. Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, some friends of ours, their daughter got this internship. I think she was like 21 going into her junior year. And she joined a product team that was focused, it was the UX of a product team. And all her role was the AI of UX in the product team. And she's like, Dad, I've never done this. And he's like, yeah, but you're best for it. No one's done it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that's really good about that generation, with a very strong curiosity muscle. And in more Gen X and boomers, we're not great at curiosity. It's not a natural muscle of ours because we're told what to do.
Yeah.
In general, we're told what to do and we do it. We're much more task oriented, whereas the muscle of curiosity has been much more ingrained into our children and much more into 20s and 30s. So again, there's always exceptions. But yeah, I think culture change has to go hand in hand with AI.
Yeah, you have to have a culture of experimenting. Certainly don't think about it as failure.
Definitely not.
Eddie, this has been awesome. And I was expecting a lot out of this conversation, but I feel like we got a lot more and our audience is going to get a lot out of this. Where can people find out more about you and about SKOR?
Fantastic. First of all, thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff, so appreciate being on the podcast, Rob. You can find me on LinkedIn, Eddie Geller, and go to our website. It's GetSKOR, GETSKOR.com. Hit me up. I love talking about this stuff and learning about other people and teams and challenges. So yeah, we'd love to be connected to anyone who listens to your podcast, Rob.
Terrific. Eddie, thanks for being on the show, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much. Talk soon.
Thanks for listening. The Great Talent, Great Business podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the worksheet for this episode at the link below. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at Great Talent, Great Business, or visit greattalentpodcast.com.